Alright, another YouTube video explanation of events, because everything that's happened is just absolutely nuts and crazy. So today I'm going to be going over the events that happened to me in 2016, before all this crazy stuff happened to me in 2023. So the events that happened to me in 2016, where to begin? My father and I had another disagreement. In this disagreement, I told him I didn't want to go and live with him in Washington, D.C. because I didn't even want to say, like, I was just scared of him. I didn't want to go and live with him. I was scared of him. He's very aggressive and abusive. So I told him no, and he was really upset about that. And verbally abused me as usual, and just kind of implied that there would be consequences for the decision that I made. After this disagreement, the weird spam phone calls started. The weird threatening spam phone calls started. The weird cars parking outside my driveway started. It was like all just the same shit that happened in 2023. It happened in 2016. And it's always when I disagree with my father about major life decisions or decide to do what I want and not what he tells me to do. Weird threatening spam phone calls, cars parking outside of my driveway, large swarms of people swamping me around. I actually found out it was called gang stalking. It's actually a tactic and a psychological technique to crazy make your victim, to basically silence them so nobody listens to them or believes their story that they're being harassed, which I actually ended up having a witness to the gang stalking because I got smart about it, because I realized, oh, you guys are trying to make me look like I'm crazy. I ended up going to like a local bar just to kind of bait them. This huge group of people swamping me like flies, just to kind of bait them to follow me in. And it was a local bar, and I made sure to go there frequently just for this purpose, was to become a regular, because the bartender there knew it was a small area, everyone that came into that bar, and if there were new people coming in or large swarms of people coming in, she would know, and she would know something's up. And it actually did happen, to where, again, I'm getting swamped by a bunch of random people letting me know they're watching me and following me around, called gang stalking. And the lady came up to me, the bartender, because she knew me, I was a regular, and she was like, "Are you being followed? Like, are those guys following you?" And finally I was like, yep, there it is, it's not just me. So I went to that just to kind of also verify with myself, also verify my own mental state with myself and where I was. Because nothing like this had ever happened to me before, and I didn't believe it was possible, or that somebody could be abusing government resources, or that a family member of mine could be abusing government resources. And if you haven't watched the other video explaining what happened in 2023 with my father, he told me in 2010 he works for the CIA and he's a Freemason. I think in that other video I accidentally said he was Illuminati. My bad, I meant to say Freemason. But I do have my suspicions about his involvement with the Illuminati, considering I have been reached out to by a couple members allegedly of the Illuminati and the CIA. Now, moving on, so I have a disagreement with him, the gang stalking starts, the spam phone call starts, and the weird cars parking out in my driveway, and also just like road rage around me. Cars would come up next to me and like almost veer me off the road, like they were gonna kill me. So this all is happening, and I'm just kind of taking wind of it, like this is not normal. Now, when things got really scary for me was basically my whole life went to shit. There were accidents all around me. Anyone I was connected to that could verify that I'm a mentally stable person, or my friends, they all just started dropping like flies. They would have issues with their car, or one friend of mine got in a near-death accident that he should not have survived. I seriously don't know how he survived it. And there were deaths, and this is all within a span of like maybe 2 or 3 months. This is all happening. Like, it wasn't just within a year, a bunch of deaths and stuff. Like, this is maybe 2 or 3 months. Everyone's having accidents. My mom got into an accident, and now people are dying. So I ended up going to a psychiatrist and a psychologist, first just to deal with all the stress and the death, and to check up on myself and make sure, like, am I, like, going crazy here, or is this shit happening? And I ended up talking to them about it. I talked to my psychologist and I talked to my psychiatrist. Now, what's interesting is what's happening now in 2023, I have talked to other psychologists about it outside of the North Central Healthcare Network, and they too have called me and said they can no longer provide services for unforeseen health reasons, and they're not seeing patients anymore. Back in 2016, the exact same occurrence happened. I had a psychologist, and he just called me after talking to him about my father in the CIA. He just called me and was like, I'm not gonna see you anymore. I'm not gonna see you anymore. And he didn't even give me a reason why. The scarier part is my psychiatrist. She was actually very supportive. She was very supportive, and I was very attached to her. She was like my best friend, and she died in an accident that was really just like a freak accident from what her family was telling me. And the whole community turned its back on them, basically. Her name was Elaine Prechette, and she had a practice in Centralia, Washington, and she died in 2016. And this is all after I started talking about the CIA and my father, and telling people that he works for the CIA. And that also there's just some weird stuff going on. I didn't really connect it at the time that maybe my father's abusing me with government resources. It didn't really occur to me. I wouldn't have even believed that either, because everyone wants to believe their dad loves them. It wasn't until later in the story people actually reached out to me and told me it was him that I finally started making connections and realizing this is weird. More deaths happened. Dogs died. My godmother, here's where things got really scary and weird, and it's hard for me to talk about. My godmother and I were extremely close. She was the closest person to me in my life. She got into an accident. Well, first she got into an accident when there was this whole flurry of accidents happening around me, and like people dropping like flies and my psychiatrist dying. She actually got into an accident and told me that it was a weird accident, like the car or something tried to get her into an accident. I don't know. And I went to go see her, and then a couple weeks later, she just drops like a fly out of nowhere and is in the hospital, completely unresponsive. And I go to visit her, and the staff at the hospital are being extremely abusive. The night I go to visit her, I leave the hospital and I get a phone call the next day about her mother. We weren't related by blood, but her mother, I considered her my grandmother, so I call her grandma, told me that people that did not work for the hospital were in my godmother's hospital room, and they were playing with her IVs. They were not nurses, they were not doctors, they were not people that she knew, they were not staff. It was just completely random people that she's never known before that were in her room messing with her IV lines. And it scared the shit out of my grandma so much that she wet her pants. Like, she wet her pants and passed out. So my godmother dies. There's still a bunch of weird stuff going on. The mental stress at this point for me, after experiencing so much death, has just completely incapacitated me from being able to work at all. I'm just completely incapacitated by all the stress and death and not understanding what the hell I'm being hit with. And then people are following me around and trying to make me look crazy, trying to make me look illegitimate and crazy to anyone I tell that this is weird, there's some weird stuff going on. And that doesn't even mention the weird technology stuff I had going on at the time, like all the phone calls, the random spam phone calls, and the weird technology stuff going on with my phone. Like, I can't remember what it was, but it was like a, you know, where you can see where your iPhone is or the location of it. I would check up on that to see it, or like I was just dinking around with it and it came up like I had another iPhone or something somewhere, and it was being accessed. Like, it was really weird. So I've got weird people following me around. Anyone I reach out to, I end up actually living with my ex-boyfriend's family for a while, and all the weird shit going on, like, they're just not believing me. They're just not believing me that weird shit's going on, even though I used that bar as kind of just to verify with myself that maybe I am crazy, maybe I am, and no, I verified with that bar because I was like, okay, you people are trying to fuck with me. Like, I'm gonna go to this bar. And that lady noticed, and she was like, no, you're being followed. Like, those guys are trying to follow you. Like, I noticed too. So, got that going on, verified it. Now, at this point, the family I'm living with just doesn't believe me. They don't believe me. And they are just basically accusing me of being mentally ill, which is exactly what the people that were gang stalking me wanted. And I eventually end up moving out of there. What else happened next? So I end up moving out of there, and I tell them that, like, I have a place to go, but I don't really have a place to go. I lost my job. I'm completely mentally and emotionally incapacitated from all the death that just happened in maybe 2 or 3 months. And then there's weird gang stalking stuff going around and weird technology stuff. And I haven't at this point at all connected the fact that my father is CIA. He has government resources. He's a Freemason. He works, when he told me he's CIA, he told me he works for the cybersecurity sector. And he's involved with like all the money or something, or all the money decisions that sector makes. So I end up living in my car for a while. I end up living in my car, and I'm like parking around and whatnot. And finally I decide, at this point, so I have completely avoided trying to go to my father. I did not want to go to my father, and I had people asking me too. I had people asking me like, why don't you want to go live with your dad? Go live with your dad. You know, he has all this money, right? I could not even begin to explain to them the amount of abuse my father has done to me psychologically and emotionally, and how abusive he's been and how scary he can get. He will make me like actually fearful for my physical safety when I am around him. And he's even told me stories, like he's bragging about them, about things that he's done to other women as if it's some kind of trophy. Like he will tell me stories about how he pointed a gun at one woman one time because he keeps it under his pillow, and that he woke up and pointed it at her or something. And like, I guess he threw a pregnant lady out of a car, like all this other stuff. And I've been with him, and like I've seen him actually spit on people in public from his car. I did not feel safe with moving in with him. I did not want to move in with him, but I was living in my car, and it was just kind of like, okay, well, I don't really have anywhere else to go. So I eventually moved in with him. Now, he's not the only person I know that lives in DC. I know a couple of people that live in DC that I ended up contacting out there as well. And I ended up making contact with them. Now, here's where I guess the suspicious activity from my father began, is I go and reach out to those other people that I know for help. So I moved in with him at this point, and I reach out to those other people for help. I'm talking to them, and they tell me that my father has told them I'm on drugs, that I'm schizophrenic and that I'm homeless, which the only thing that was accurate there was the homelessness. Everything else was completely inaccurate. And I was just like, what the fuck? Like, why would you even do that? So my dad proceeds, I'm living with my father at this point, and my dad proceeds to verbally abuse me in public in front of his girlfriend at the time, and it's just really disrespectful. So I walk out from that dinner that we were having, and I'm just basically like, okay, this isn't gonna work. He is being super abusive. I have nowhere to go. I'm homeless. And then I actually end up just making a small talk with somebody and telling them about what just happened to me, like right outside the restaurant too. Like I just walked over to the mall from the restaurant and we got talking, and he was really cool. And him and his roommates actually ended up taking me in later because my father left me in the middle of nowhere. He just left me, and he also took my purse because my purse was in his car. And he also hid my purse from me. So he left me in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night, and this guy that I met was very nice. He was an Uber driver. He offered to drive me home for free. And I didn't have a key because my father had my purse and had hidden it from me in the house to get into the house. And it was like drenching down rain and thunder and lightning. And I was just like, okay, bye. Like, I didn't want to tell you I can't get into the house. So I end up sitting outside in the rain pouring down on me, and thunder and lightning. Like, I think a lightning bolt struck right next to me to a tree. Like, I was not in a good place. And eventually they ended up calling me back and saying, are you okay? Like, we didn't see you go into the house. Do you not have a key? They just kind of knew. And they took me in, actually. They came and picked me up soaking wet. They bought me new clothes, like out of their own money. They took me to Walmart and just bought me a whole new outfit because I was soaking wet in a towel. And they offered me a place to stay for free. And mind you, I also have a cat. Like, I also have a cat at this time. And they took care of me. Now here's where things get weird. So there's a couple of men living there, and they give me my own private area that I can sleep in. One of the men comes up to me when we're alone together in the house, or not when we're in the house, but in his car. We're alone together in his car. He tells me, I know who you are. And I was like, what does that mean? And he starts talking about my father. And this guy also has a military background. I don't know what he did, but it's something with, like, they were all Afghan, by the way. All of these were Afghan, from Afghanistan, and they all served the US. But anyway, so he was just like, I know who you are, I know who your dad is, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, I don't. I have no idea what you're talking about. So I ended up eventually moving out of there because just with their culture, they were very kind to take me in, but with their culture, with how men and women associate with each other, it was really not ideal for Muslims to have a group of men and one woman living in an apartment. So I ended up moving out of there and moving in with another woman who has been abused by my father, Leilani Alwine. So my father, and when I move in with her, she is really, like, paranoid. I mean, understandably so, because of the abuse that my father has done to her and to my little brother now, Connor, the abuse that he's done to them. So from her stories, my father has locked my brother in a closet, or like there was some kind of abuse going on. And when my brother went to go and speak out about it, social services in town basically called a little kid a liar and said, you're making it up and he doesn't know what he's talking about. that's pretty similar to the weird stuff going on with me, that I try speaking up about it, and then there's all these government resources and people in positions of authority and power that are making false accusations and false reports and disregarding the fact that I am bringing up illegal activity has been done. I guess also my father ran over her foot, like her entire foot, with his car, and she told me about just a bunch of other stuff, so I'm living with her for a while. Definitely didn't work out though. It just wasn't a good fit for me. DC was bad. I actually ended up getting roofied by her neighbors and raped. I was drugged and raped by a group of men in Washington, DC, that were her neighbors, and God, I mean, it was just too late. They offered me a drink and it was just like one sip, and then all of a sudden, boom, like I remember bits and pieces, and it's really hard to talk about, but the bits and pieces that I remember were pretty awful, and it involved them videotaping me. They actually videotaped me. So moving on, I finally decided, like, this isn't happening. DC's not happening. I'm going back to Washington. And I ended up being homeless in Washington for a while until my now ex-husband, Jason Crick, that's how I met my husband. I was homeless, and he basically scraped me off the side of the road and took care of me and took me in. Now, this is where I start to get informed about what's going on. You know, I think in another video I explained his story about how what they did to me, they also did to him. He began speaking out about government abuse and conspiracy and use of government resources, and false allegations were filed against him. He was illegally committed to a mental health institution and purposefully misdiagnosed and forced to take antipsychotic medication, which made it impossible for him to communicate about what was going on or even tell anyone what was going on, and basically indirectly threatened and implied that if you don't stop fucking talking, you're going to die. We're gonna keep medicating the shit out of you and saying that you're mentally unstable. And this all took place at a Joint Base Lewis McChord, which used to be known as Fort Lewis in Tacoma, Washington. At least that is where his abuse took place. And it was all part of some sort of secret government project called the Phoenix Project. And it was in retaliation to him speaking out about what was going on in the Middle East, and because he was special forces and there was some sort of project out there that he was a part of, Project Helm and Spider or something like that, where basically we weren't fighting the Taliban. We weren't fighting the Taliban at all. We would have tea with them in the morning, pretend to shoot each other, and then they would trade vats of oil for supplies to grow more opium. And that was basically our relationship with the Taliban out there, and it really pissed him off because his mom was an ex-addict, and he went to go fight and die for his country, and he ended up fighting and dying for, people to poison other people with more drugs. So he began speaking out about it, and then basically when you speak out about it, the same shit that's happening to me has happened to him and has happened to other veterans, which I find very interesting as well. When you encounter that whole PTSD, that poor veteran guy, you know, he really lost it. The interesting thing is all these veterans that are crazy and have PTSD, they're all talking about the same thing. They're not talking about different kinds of crazy. They're all talking about the exact same thing. And they're being forcefully medicated and silenced by the mental health care system. So moving on, where am I with my story? So I end up, he's taking care of me, we get pregnant, we have a baby, it's like a happy family, blah, blah, blah. and just kind of like life issues, you know, things end up not really working out. And the more I am with Jason, the more I am with him, the more he tells me about the different conspiracy things going on. He tells me that I am a victim. He also told me he was a remote viewer for the CIA. He told me he was a remote viewer for the CIA, which I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what a remote viewer was, but basically what they are is it's a psychic that works for the government. And this was all experimented on. This was all documented and researched back in Russia back in like 1960s or something. It was brought over here, but they use a technique called remote viewing to basically spy on anyone and receive and retrieve confidential information from anywhere. So he told me he was a remote viewer for the CIA. He told me that he had been a part of some sort of program that my father was involved in, and he also told me that my father had abused me and I am a victim of Project MKUltra, which I didn't know what that was until the more I stayed with him, the more I researched into it and found out about it. Project MKUltra stands for mind control, and it was a project run by the CIA that was declassified and leaked to the general public. I don't know the date that it was leaked, but it was leaked to the general public, and the things they were doing were atrocious. They were experimenting on children, they were experimenting on psychiatric patients, and this was all like, it was all like headquartered in Madison, Wisconsin and Canada, and a major head player in it was Dr. Cameron Green. And Dr. Green would experiment on psychiatric patients using psychiatric torture, using psychological torture techniques. He would also use prescription medication to alter their mental states. So he told me about that. He said, my father has been abusing me and I'm a victim of MKUltra. Now, he is not the only one that has reached out to me about this. I have had other members of the alleged CIA, the intelligence community, and then also other members of allegedly the Illuminati reach out to me and let me know some information. Let me know some information and about what's going on, and even just like just kind of weird bits and pieces of information, like an Illuminati temple or something that is somewhere here in Wisconsin that the Illuminati came and bought from him because it was in his family for generations, and it's a cheese curd factory now. Stuff like that. And then God, what else? So I'm living with him. We have our big happy family. We're trying to be a big happy family. Now, during the time that I lived with him, there was a lot of strange stuff going on around him. like I'm familiar with government backgrounds. I'm familiar with government people, and there would be like government people that would approach us and just start talking to us, and they had backgrounds that I've never even heard of, like the MUFON, which is a UFO background. There were a lot of Air Force backgrounds, and like just people talking about, and so yeah, that's going on. We eventually move and buy our house in Wisconsin and get a divorce, blah blah blah, and then, you know, the events for 2023 that happened. So that's just kind of what happened in 2016, or at least I don't really know how to link it all, but the strange occurrences, the phone calls, the gang stalking, the cars parking outside of my driveway, blaring their headlights into my freaking house, letting me know, and then also accidents, random accidents and deaths everywhere, and then psychologists that I speak to about my father's affiliation with the CIA calling me and saying that they can no longer work with me, and now basically the same thing has happened. Except this time, I mean, it's been verified now, because I've had false allegations made against me to illegally commit me to the mental health system under a forced commitment with forced medication and treatment, which has all been done illegally by law enforcement and by a psychiatrist at North Central Healthcare who made false allegations about me in front of a judge. So what else? My roommate's brake lines have been cut. More accidents. I recently had what I believe to be a cyber attack on my brand new iMac desktop that I bought less than 2 months ago. Has just very suddenly kaputzed after I began uploading all of this footage and documenting everything that has happened. And the guy that I brought it into somehow knew that it was a hardware issue before I even talked to him and told him what happened. So I've got that going on. What else? Yeah. Accidents, strange occurrences. And when I bring this up to staff or people at North Central Healthcare or other people, you have those other people that are like, that is really weird. That is really suspicious. That's really weird. And then the other people that just say, yeah, you have to quit talking about it, or indirectly threaten me about talking about illegal activity. So that's what's going on. These events have occurred before and they're occurring again, and it's becoming a pattern. And this time I'm documenting it. So that's all for now. Yeah, that's it.